Hey, this is Dead Turn here, lead playtester for Black Magic Labs, and today we're previewing Haktos the Brash. Alright, so there was a deck a while ago that revolved around Stormwild, Capridor, or I don't know how you say it, whatever. This bird goat crazy looking thing. They were gimmicky, they weren't great, but there's cards available to us that I think makes this deck really good, and I decided to actually take a hack at it. So I think Haktos makes this deck work. I think they were too focused around this card, and we're gonna instead actually create a whole theme, a whole strategy. What we're gonna do is we're gonna keep the board kind of clear, and we're gonna beat people with creatures they can't really touch, they can't really do stuff to. First off, let's start with, we're going to do this a little differently, and we're going to start with the key players to the deck. So Hatktos the Unscarred. For double Boros, you got a 6/1. He has to attack each combat if able, but when he enters the battlefield, you choose 2, 3, or 4 at random. He has protection from each converted mana cost other than the chosen number. So yes, he will die to board wipes, but he won't be able to be targeted, especially if you get like 3. 3 is the sweet spot. 4, there's a lot of kill spells, 2 is a lot of kill spells, but 3 is the sweet spot. And you have 6/1 that can't be blocked for the most part. Just can beat face. It's really good. I mean, this card is amazing. I'm surprised no one's really found a way to utilize him all that much. Just a side note, you can see a couple cards are a little blacked out. We're missing a copy or 2 of them. I think it's a copy of this and a copy of this. It's not a big deal. We've play tested with just random cards thrown in those spots, and this deck still plays really well. So that's the Haktos. The Brash part is Brash Taunter. This card is another card people played around with, but never really got anywhere. It's really good in this deck. It's pretty funny card. So it's 4 and a red for a 1/1 indestructible, which seems just terrible, but when it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent, which is fine. Okay, so it's a good blocker. But for 2 and a red, you tap it and it fights another target creature. They play their whatever, their 5/5, their 6/6, you fight it, and then you do that much damage to your opponent, which is really nice. And it makes it hard to attack in, it makes it hard to do a lot of stuff. They have to have an exile effect or a negative effect. So he's really good. We're going to play 4 of him. We're going to play 3 of Haktos because he's legendary. And then we're going to play the Stormwild Capridor, whatever it's called. This is a 1/3 flying. If a non-combat damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage, and you put that many 1/1 counters for each 1 damage prevented that way. So we're going to have a lot of stuff that deals damage to the board or deals damage, single target damage that we can deal to it to make it real big and get ridiculous with it. The last creature in the deck that we're going to play around is Lavabrink Venturer. We're missing 1 of him too. So we're missing 3 cards, I think, for this deck. It's 2 and a white for a 3/3, which is not bad. As it enters the battlefield, choose odd or even. It has protection from each converted mana cost of the chosen value. So we can wipe the board with our Crush the Weeks or our Storm Draft or whatever, and this guy stays around and he blocks well. Especially if they're playing an odd or even deck, this card, we just choose what they're playing and we have protection from every card in their deck. So this card's really nice. Generally you're going to choose even, but sometimes you will choose odd. But it's a fun card. I really wanted to play this card in a deck where it's actually pretty effective, and it's really good in this deck. So we're going to have 4 creatures here, 4 different creatures that are all going to be either hard to deal with or just do ridiculous stuff. So we got Blitz of Thunder Raptor to start off with our spells here. It's 1 and a red. It deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. We're going to have a lot of instants and sorceries in this deck, as we're going to have a lot of spells that deal damage, so this should get pretty good. And then if a creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. Well, we can do it to here for to make this massively big. Otherwise, it's really good to take out our opponent's creatures and they get exiled so they don't have to deal with them again. It also hits planeswalkers, which is nice. Then we have Crush the Weak. Crush the Weak deals 2 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this turn would die this turn, exile it instead. So this allows us to, again, have another exile effect to take out our opponent's creatures. It costs 2 and a red, but you can foretell it for 2 and then cast it for 1 on a later turn, which is real nice. Our other thing here is going to be Demon Bolt. These foretell cards are going to be nice since we only have this turn 2. We have these so we can foretell for turn 2, and then play them on turn 3 or 4 or whatever we need to do. But then we have Demon Bolt, which deals 4 damage to target creature or player for 2 and a red, which is not great, but for 1 mana that's really good. So you can foretell it and then later turn pay it for 1 mana. This allows us to have it ready to go when we get our Stormwild out, or ready ready to go when we need to destroy one of their creatures. We're going to play 4 Storm's Wrath. This is 2 and 2 red. It deals 4 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. So if we choose even, this guy won't die. This guy will get bigger. As long as this is not 4, he won't die. And the Brash Taunter is going to deal damage to our opponents. So this is really a one-sided board wipe for the most part. It's really nice for our deck. And it helps us keep their planeswalkers under control. And then we're also going to play Chandra, Heart of Fire. Update. So since Strixhaven has come out, this deck has changed, and we recorded the video for this deck tech before Strixhaven, and we wanted to make note of those changes now. So we've taken out Chandra. We have instead added Blade Historian. So Blade Historian is white or red, white or red, white or red, white or red again. For a total of 4 white or red mana, you get a 2/3. Which is just ridiculously bad stats, but that's okay. What we care about is what's on the creature itself. It says attacking creatures you control have double strike. This is going to allow us to then attack in with a Haktos. That's going to be a 12 worth of damage. This is going to make our Stormwild attack in for a lot of damage, allow a lot of extra damage to be pushed. Our Haktos can attack in for 12. Our Stormwild guy is going to be able to attack in for a lot also. On the Burning Venture, we can attack in for 6. At this, it can be a little bit better than Chandra. Yes, it's not going to provide the same card advantage that Chandra provided, nor is it going to provide the deal 2 damage to any target, but I think this is going to help us win more. Early playtesting suggests as such, and it's going to be 1 less in the casting cost, so it'll be easier to cast and get out sooner. It will die, though, to the Storm's Wrath. It does survive the Crush the Weak. If it didn't survive the Crush the Weak, we'd take it out, but it does survive Crush the Weak, but it will die to Storm's Wrath. And the other card we have changed out is we have dropped, as we were just speaking about, 1 of Crush the Weak. Crush the Weak is now being replaced with 1 of Crackle with Power. So Crackle with Power is a really interesting card that could be potentially very powerful. I see it being very powerful in Commander. I'm not sure where it will sit in Standard. So it's red, red, and triple X. Yes, you heard me right. Triple X. So what do you get for a red sorcery with red, red, triple X? Well, you get a card that deals 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. So for 5 mana, you put 1 into each X and you pay your 2 red. You get 5 damage. 5 damage for 5 mana to 1 target is actually pretty good. This is essentially Lava Axe to your opponent's face. We can also use this on the Stormwild to really beef them up. Say you have 8 mana. Well, now you can do up to 10 damage to 2 different targets. So you could pump up your Stormwild and then hit your opponent for 10 damage and then swing in for lethal damage. So this does allow for a massive effect, but it does take a lot of mana. It's a huge power sink, a huge mana drop that you're going to have to do. This with Fiery Emancipation is ridiculous. I mean, we dropped Fiery Emancipation, we dropped this out, turn or 2 later where we have that 8 mana to do the 10 damage. Well, Fiery Emancipation is going to say triple that, so we're going to do 30 damage. I mean, insane. 8 mana, 30 damage to 2 different targets. That's ridiculous damage. So just the fact that pairs insanely well with Fiery Emancipation is one of the reasons why we're adding a 1-up. The fact, though, that it's going to be at least 5 mana for 5 damage to 1 target is a little too much to really want to sink maybe more than 1 in, but maybe you could find another spot. Maybe you also cut Blitz of the Thunderraptor to add a second one. That's not necessarily outside the realm of possibility, especially with how well that pairs up with Fiery Emancipation. 2 Fiery Emancipations. It's mostly a red deck, so we can play triple red not too bad. This card makes all our stuff way better, so it's fine on its own. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. So that with Storm's Wrath deals 12 to the board. I mean, Haktos can hit in for 18 unblockable. It does some stupid stuff. So just is like the top end of this deck to help finish people off. And going back to the Blade Historian for a second, the Blade Historian plus Fiery Emancipation leads to some dumb stuff because Haktos attacks in, he hits for 6, which then becomes 18, and then he hits for another 6, which then becomes 18. So Haktos with the Emancipation in the Blade Historian can just put out a 36 damage too. So I think these two cards are going to add a lot of power to the deck, and while it does cut down on some of the versatility while taking Chandra out, I think what it adds in power to the deck and it allows the deck to finish our opponents off even faster and better, I think are going to be well worth it. If you're finding maybe we don't need his Heliod's Intervention, or maybe we don't need 4 Banishing Lights, maybe you can sneak Chandra into the sideboard, so that's always something to think about. Lands are pretty interesting here. We're going to play 1 Ardenvale just to get some token generability against control. We're going to play 2 Plains and 4 Mountains, 2 Castle Endbrith to just give that little extra boost to our guys, you know, make Haktos slightly stronger, make our Brink Venturer slightly stronger, you know, that kind of thing. We're going to play 4 of the Needle Leverage Pathway Flip land, and 2 of the Temple of Triumph, and 2 of the Savai Triome. You could play 4 of either one of these instead. I like this just because late game you might want a cycle ability, or you might just need to be able to draw a card when you need it. This gives you that scry, which is nice. Either one of these is fine. I just like the split just to give you that a little bit different abilities and a little bit more ways to play the game, I guess. Then we're going to play 4 Fabled Passages. We have 6 basic lands. That should be fine. You might need to go down to 3. You might find if you're having too many times this is a dead card. But mostly we just want this in here to help get some of these lands out of the deck, so that way we can find our good spells. Mirror's Call, Bolt Land on the flip side. Create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens, and the other non-angels gain indestructible till the turn. And then 2 Shattered Skull Smashing. This could change. I mean, you could easily take these Fabled Passages out and put 2 more of these in and put 2 more of these in. That's another way you could play it. But this deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. It affects 6 more, deals double or twice that damage instead. It's a Bolt Land on the flip side, so this is nice if you know if you have 8 mana just sitting around, you can do X is 6 and do 12 damage to him. Swing in for 13, and if you have this out and it's a ridiculous amount, just you can do some dumb stuff, combo-y type things with this. You might want to up that. I don't know. I kind of like the Fabled Passage in here, but that's something you can think about. The sideboard. Well, the sideboard's going to kind of take care of the problems we're going to have. We got Robber of the Rich. This is going to help us against control or other decks that want to hold on to their hand, give us early hits early on, as well as get some cards out of their deck that we can cast for ourselves later. We also had an update to the sideboard here. So as you can see, it showed Withered Runestone in. Withered Runestone was actually really good and did a lot of work against a lot of decks, and I liked it a lot. The one problem though was the rise of the Emergent Ultimatum decks and a decrease in the other kind of Ultimatum deck, where Withered Runestone was good against some of those other Ultimatums as well as being good against graveyard strategies and such. It just didn't do anything against Emergent Ultimatum at all, and because of this we had to go with a different card. So we switched that to Drannith Magistrate, and it says your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hand. So this is going to kind of help the same kind of way. It'll shut down those other ultimatums. It's going to shut down graveyard strategies they're trying to escape. It's going to also shut down anything else, as well as shut down Emergent Ultimatum. This is going to accomplish the same thing as with a Runestone, and it's going to do it a little bit more effectively, and it's only going to shut down our opponents. It won't shut down any of our strategies, say Elspeth Conquers Death, if we also side that in at the same time. But the one problem is it's a creature, so there's a lot more ways to kill it, and there's a lot less artifact hate than there is creature hate, but it does survive Crush the Weak, which is nice. This is a good card, and as long as Emergent Ultimatum is a heavily played deck as it is still, even after Strixhaven has come out, we're still going to have to need Drannith Magistrate over the Runestone. However, if Emergent Ultimatum disappears, I don't see any reason why we can't go back to the Runestone, as it is just as good. It's just can't stop cast from exile that Emergent Ultimatum is utilizing. So for Banishing Lights, you know, if you need to get control under control or deal with aggro a little bit more aggressively, you can put in some Banishing Lights. Elspeth Conquers Death for some late game viability, and as well as to reanimate like a Haktos or, you know, Brash Taunters, one of these other creatures that we have. Heliod's Intervention for the Doom Foretold decks, because Doom Foretold is going to be one of the weak spots of this deck, as we don't have a lot of permanents entering the field, and who cares if they have protection from the colors if we have to sacrifice. So that's what we're going to use Heliod's Intervention for. So this deck's pretty good. I like it. It's a fun deck. It's a little ridiculous, a little slow, but it's fun. It does some dumb stuff with the Stormwild, and Haktos can just get in there and hack right away. So I like the deck. I think it's a cool way of utilizing these cards. All these cards that no one's really playing with, all in one deck to make a pretty good deck's always good. So well, let's see how she plays. As always, like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. Also, please consider supporting Black Magic Labs on Patreon. Thanks.